The second day in a row, Senator J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect, spent the day chaperoning an unqualified man seriously accused of sex crimes around the Capitol. 2 days in a row. Asking senators to look past it all and vote for the guy to take one of the most powerful jobs in the entire world. Yesterday, Vance accompanied Matt Gaetz and tried to sell fellow Republican senators on his bid to be attorney general. And as we were just reporting, that didn't go so well. Well, today, Vance was doing the same for Fox News host Pete Hegseth, Trump's pick to be Secretary of Defense. In fact, it was outside Vance's Senate office that Hegseth gave this very lawyerly response to a reporter asking about the latest troubling allegations against him.
Did you sexually assault a woman in Monterey, California?
I have, as far as the media is concerned, it's very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's probably legal.
You'll be shocked to learn it isn't quite that simple. Hegseth has not been charged, but he wasn't completely cleared, in his words. In fact, the allegations are as serious as they come. In 2017, the allegation is Hegseth sexually assaulted a woman he met at a political conference he spoke at in California for Republican women. This is a conference that, fellow conservatives, fellow Republicans. Now, those allegations first came to light last week after the Washington Post obtained a memo written by a friend of the accuser and sent to the Trump transition team to alert them of the case. Like, heads up here, guys. The memo sent to the Trump team said that the woman identified in the memo only as Jane Doe was there with the California Federation of Republican Women. The woman was staying at the hotel with her small children and her husband, according to the memo, which laid out the woman's complaint. Now, the Trump team did not even know about the allegation before Hegseth was announced as the Pentagon nominee, according to the Post. But since then, Hegseth's attorney has said in a statement that the nominee did in fact have sex with the 30-year-old married conservative staffer, but that it was consensual. And he added that Hegseth paid the woman an undisclosed amount as part of a non-disclosure agreement because he feared that revelation of the matter would result in his immediate termination from Fox. Hegseth did not get an NDA, however, with the Monterey, California City Attorney's Office. And while they pressed no charges against him, they did provide reporters with a 22-page police report on the incident. That complaint originated with an emergency room nurse who was required to report the incident to police after the accuser went to the hospital to request a sexual assault examination. The details in that complaint are upsetting. The accuser, who's called Jane Doe in the report, was socializing with other women at the conference when Hegseth joined them. She, quote, stated she observed Hegseth acting inappropriately with the women at the conference. Hegseth would rub the women on their legs, and Jane Doe thought his actions were inappropriate. In fact, the accuser had texted an unnamed friend, quote, that Hegseth was giving off a creeper vibe. The woman said she remembered walking out of the bar and assumed Hegseth followed her because she argued with Hegseth near the pool. The argument was about Hegseth's actions with the women at the conference. At that point, she remembered Hegseth telling her that he was a nice guy. She said, quote, the next memory she had was when she was in an unknown room. Jane Doe did not know where she was and how she got to the room. Hegseth was in the room with her. She said she got up and tried to leave the room, but Hegseth blocked the door with his body. Jane Doe remembered saying no a lot. The report then details the woman's recollection of being underneath him as he sexually assaulted her. I'm not going to read you that part of the report, but according to her account, Hegseth's dog tags from his military service were hovering over her face. Now, again, Hegseth denies all this. He says they had consensual sex. He's even suggested that the woman was the aggressor in this encounter. Hegseth clearly knows what a liability this story is. I mean, there's a police report, an accusation of sexual assault, a woman going to a hospital. And he knows it because he literally paid for it to go away to preserve his job on the Fox and Friends couch. Now, the Trump team was reportedly completely blindsided by allegations and then blindsided again by the police report. People familiar with the discussions told the Wall Street Journal today that Trump's transition team did not know that Hegseth had gotten a copy of that police report, something he apparently hadn't told them. They did not know this about the guy Trump picked to run the entire United States Department of Defense, largest employer in America, one of the largest bureaucracies in human history. What else didn't they know? But here's the thing, as with Matt Gaetz, putting all of this beside, Even before these allegations came out, Pete Hegseth was manifestly unqualified to manage the Pentagon and its nearly 3 million civilian and military employees. A man who's never run anything bigger than a right-wing AstroTurf veterans group funded by the Koch brothers. A man who was removed from a security detail protecting Joe Biden's inauguration and ultimately left the National Guard after the D.C. Guard's head of physical security flagged Hegseth as a potential insider threat, citing a tattoo of Hegseth as a symbol common among white supremacist and militant groups. Hegseth says it's merely a Christian tattoo. This week, a military official familiar with Hegseth's service in the D.C. Guard told NBC News that, quote, he had zero leadership capability, he had his own agenda, he didn't care what the rules were, he didn't care what the parameters were, he was just doing what he needed to get ahead. Senator Tammy Duckworth is a Democrat from Illinois who served on the Armed Services Committee. She's an Iraq War veteran and Purple Heart recipient, and she joins me now. Senator, first I want to start on some of the revelations around these allegations, which I think both speak to character, clearly, if they're true, and he denies them. But also there's an institutional issue here with how the Department of Defense deals with such accusations and justice in those cases. What is your reaction to what's been reported so far about the allegations against Mr. Hegseth?
I mean, it's insane. He already was manifestly unqualified to be Secretary of Defense, but it's insane that Donald Trump wants this man who admits, as you said, he paid off a woman who accused him of rape to lead the Department of Defense. Remember now, we've been working for over a decade on military sexual trauma, getting to finally a place where the military is doing better. And it is really a slap in the face for the men and women who wear the uniform of this great nation, should this man be confirmed to be Secretary of Defense. Not just because he's really unqualified, but these sexual assault allegations are something that's going to give a lot of people pause. And let me tell you, if I'm, if my girls are 6 and 10 now, but if they were to come to me at 18 and say, hey, I want to go join the military, I'd think twice if that's who the Secretary of Defense is. Speaking of them joining the military, he has some pretty sharp views on the role of women in the armed forces, particularly women in combat. I'm sure you've seen this clip. I'm sure it's been played for you, but I'm going to play it again for the audience. This is him speaking on a podcast about his views on women in combat. Take a listen.
You got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke, it's got to go.
You don't like women in combat?
No. I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles.
Obviously, you served in combat quite famously. I think I know where you stand on this, but what does it mean for the institution to have a Secretary of Defense on the record saying that? What it means is you have a Secretary of Defense who does not understand modern warfare. This is not the Revolutionary War. This isn't even like Vietnam, where you have front lines. The most casualties we took in Iraq was during convoy operations. Over 50% of our casualties in Iraq was during performing convoy operations. Driving a truck is a job that women have been doing since World War I. If you were in the Green Zone in Baghdad doing, if you were a cook in the Green Zone, you were in combat. You took incoming missile fire all the time. And so this just shows us, not only is it a morale issue, but it's the fact that he doesn't understand modern warfare. If he thinks that there's a way to keep women out of combat, not to mention that there are over 200,000 women serving in uniform today in the military. We couldn't go to war without our women. So it really just points to how deeply unqualified he is to lead the Department of Defense. It also strikes me, I mean, again, aside from his views, aside from the allegations, just purely on experience. Like, I can think of, a lot of folks that I know that are very, very sharp and who have served. I wouldn't necessarily say they should run the Department of Defense. Like, it is basically the largest entity you could run anywhere in the U.S. And I guess, what do you think the qualifications are affirmatively, like that he lacks? Obviously past secretaries have been people who have some experience basically managing large bureaucracies. Yeah, I mean, he was a platoon leader, which is 35 guys. We're talking about going from managing 35 people to 3 million people with a budget in this year's NDAA's budget is $923 billion. Pretty high. Pretty high. You can't just put anybody to go do that. I would be worried about Hegseth running a McDonald's.
something, let alone the Department of Defense. This is absolutely insane. And my questions for him, you talked about advice and consent. When he comes in front of me as part of the Senate Armed Services Committee, it's going to be focused on what experience do you have? Have you done logistics? Do you understand how to do supply chain? Do you understand manufacturing? What do you know about targeting? What do you know about a battalion, division, army operations? And he's not going to be able to answer any of that because he operated at such a low level. And he has no experience even in the civilian world. It's not like he's been CEO of a major corporation. He's done none of that. And we're going to entrust this man with the lives of the most patriotic, heroic Americans we have, the men and women who wear the uniform of this great nation. It would be malpractice and it would be a crime to confirm this man to be Secretary of Defense.
I want to just show, so today Matt Gaetz, who I think a lot of people on Capitol Hill across the ideological spectrum thought was a poor choice to be Attorney General of the United States. And there are many people on both sides of the aisle, particularly Republicans, who hold him in ill will. There were basically at least 5 no votes. Susan Collins, the new Senator-elect John Curtis, who was replacing Mitt Romney, comes out of Utah. Mitch McConnell, of course. Markwayne Mullin, who quite famously went on that long rant about essentially what a scumbag he thought Matt Gaetz was, and Lisa Murkowski. I guess my question to you is, where do you see this right now? I mean, I think this is, for you, this is pretty existential. This is a person who just has no business having this job. He doesn't quite have the same reputation on Capitol Hill because Matt Gaetz is a singular entity. But where do you think this stands?
Well, let me say this. As the mom of 2 young girls, as I said, ages 6 and 10, I don't think Hexbeth could pass a background check to be a babysitter, let alone pass a background check to be Secretary of Defense, especially since he has admitted to paying off an accuser who accuses him of sexual assault. Would you want to put this man in charge of taking care of your kids, let alone 3 million personnel in the Department of Defense? I think not.